This is the new BMW X1, the third generation model. Like the 2 Series Grand Coupe or even the outgoing X1, this one is based on the ULK2 platform or the Unterer Klasse platform in German, which simply translates to lower class. But then with a price tag of 45 to 50 lakh rupees, it's anything but lower class. But it is the most low-cost crossover that you can buy from BMW at the moment. And I think this just might be the best buy in the segment. Is it? Let's find out. For starters, the U11 model looks bigger than the F48 or the second generation X1 that it replaces. It is almost as big as the first generation X5. And if I got a penny for every time people thought this was an X3, I could be able to afford a new X1 for myself. The pinched and sleek window line, which still has a bit of that Hofmeister kink, the long and the slim roof rails and the short overhangs enhance the sense of length, while the 3D LED taillights that stick out from the bodywork add a perception of width. The grille isn't humongous, but it is large nevertheless, and combined with the bulge in the bonnet, imparts the most upright stance yet on the X1. The tail is pretty upright too, but the tapering roof extends into a sporty spoiler, which, coupled with those diffuser elements in the bumper, add bucket loads of sportiness to the overall design, and I think the rear is the best looking car for the new X1. The car looks sportier than the XC40 and even makes the Mercedes-Benz GLA, which is now a larger car, look like a hatchback on stilts. Sure, it doesn't look as dynamic as the Q3 or doesn't have the oomph of the Q3 Sportback. But once you look at that cabin, the space it offers, the kind of design it has, the textures, how new age it feels, it's likely to make you choose the X1 over any of its rivals. And then it has the sheer size. There is still a large chunk of the audience that still wants a specific size to price ratio. And for those customers, the X1 is going to tick all the right boxes, especially when it comes to exterior dimensions, sheer size, and that imposing stance. There are some expensive touches too, like the carpet lighting. The headlights are the adaptive LED type and have a brilliant throw and spread. They could do with a bit more design flair though. The X1 shares its platform with the Mini Countryman, but unlike its predecessors, it doesn't have that aggressive face that put it poles apart from the Mini. Like the Brit, this one too takes a more conservative approach that makes the face look docile even in this M Sport trim. Oh, and by the way, this trim gets you the M-specific grille, gloss black accents in the bumper and the window line, there's a different key fob, and there are the M badges in the bodywork and of course on the steering wheel. The M Sport wheel also gets you paddle shifters behind the wheel, however they are a bit of a reach, especially if you have smaller fingers. And speaking of reaching out, your co-passenger may find it particularly uncomfortable to reach out to the media or the navigation menus if you were to ask for their help. Because you see, like most BMW cars, the touchscreen or the dashboard is driver-centric. It's all angled towards the driver. Like most new BMW cars, most of the controls have now been put into the unintuitive iDrive system that they have been taken off. The physical buttons have been taken off. And unlike most new BMW cars, the jog dial has been taken out too. So once you got your way around the infotainment and the different menus, you could easily use that jog dial. It was a convenient and a safe tool to use all of that without really having to take your eyes off the road. But that tool has now gone missing with the new X1. The plus side to redesigning the tunnel console is more storage space. You get a floating upper deck which can house some knickknacks, a shelf below it for other small items. Then there are 2 cup holders, 2 USB-C ports and a unique upright wireless charger. I like that design because when you keep your phone here, it sits at an angle that is convenient for you to just glance at it if you have to. Otherwise, there is wireless Apple CarPlay, so the touchscreen will take care of most of the notifications and giving you whatever relevant information that you really need. I'm not a big fan of the new iDrive 8 infotainment system, but having driven many new BMWs in the past couple of months, it is starting to grow on me. And it's clearly better than its rivals in terms of specs and features. As for the floating panel, it does give you some bit of space to keep your knickknacks. However, the door for this panel or the door for this compartment is hinged towards the driver, which means it makes it a little difficult to access or look at the stuff that you have here, especially on the move. You just can't do that. It's too unsafe. I think BMW was just too lazy when they did the left-hand drive to right-hand drive transition. And then you have the storage space right beneath. Now, if you were to keep things here, and if you were to go over a bumpy road, or if you were to get into a scenario where there's some panic braking involved, the things start moving around, flying around. It's happened to me. So, not the most convenient way to store items. I like the ambient lighting package, the dual stitching, and all the textures used in the cabin elements. It all feels modern, and the fit and finish feels a couple of notches better than what the competition offers, which is another reason why I would buy the new X1 over its rivals. Then we come to the rear seat. Now, the rear doors, they look a little narrow from the outside, but ingress and egress is not a problem at all. In fact, this convenience is one of the reasons why you would choose a crossover over a sedan in this particular space. Now, in terms of the rear seat comfort, not too bad at all. I mean, the cushioning is quite good. I like the overall cushioning, not just for the bottom, but also for the back. The knee room is excellent. The driver's seat is set to my preference, and just look at the kind of space it offers. This wasn't available in an entry-level crossover until a few years back, but now you get that in this space as well. Headroom, again, excellent. You get that panoramic roof, so it's a nice airy feel. Even the windows, nice and large, so you can get a good feel outside of the windows as well. However, if you were to roll down the windows for whatever reason while driving, it doesn't go down completely. So if you want to keep your arm here, it's a bit of a problem. You also do not get any window blinds. Maybe some aftermarket options will have to be looked into. You do get a center armrest, a floating type. You do get two cup holders here as well. But like I said, the overall comfort is quite nice. But the party trick, especially with the M Sport trim, is that you also get 130 millimeters of recline for these seats. And then there is a 40-20-40 split for the rear seat. So if you need better versatility, you can do that too. Even the boot volume is fairly large to accommodate a family's luggage, and a flat floor makes it easy to load and unload. And there is a power tailgate too. But what you don't get on the tailgate is the variant badging. And even from the outside, you can't really tell the diesel from the petrol, because you see, the oiler is actually that silent. Honestly, I haven't driven the petrol variant of the new X1. However, looking at the kind of downsized engines that the Germans have been plonking in many of their cars now, I know that that petrol engine, despite what it says on the spec sheet, is going to be adequate. It is going to perform as expected. However, I also know that the size to price ratio is true not only for the exterior dimensions of the car, but also for the engine size, for the engine capacity. So, like the A-Class or the new C-Class, even for the X1, the diesel is going to be the better option. The diesel is a 2-liter 4-cylinder turbocharged engine that is extremely refined and silent, and you will have to look at the tachometer to know that this is a diesel, though the 6000 RPM red line might still confuse you. Unlike some of the other BMW cars, it doesn't even say diesel on the fuel gauge, but it's a nice, silent, refined engine. So the tachometer is the only way to know that this is a diesel. But it's not just the refinement, even the power. This one puts out 150 PS compared to the 136 PS in the petrol. I know even a Taygun or even a Creta now is putting out 150 PS of power. So it may not sound like a big deal, but the 360 Newton meters of torque on this ensures that in most driving scenarios, it always feels punchy, not just adequate, but punchy. And that's a good feeling to have, especially at this price point. Furthermore, it also gets you better fuel economy, and not just that, it also gets you better CO2 emissions than the petrol engine. How surprising is that? 130 grams per kilometer of CO2 emissions for this diesel versus 145 grams per kilometer for the petrol. I've said this before as well. We are in an era of clean diesel engines. So the government, instead of just banning a certain fuel type, should actually put a cap on the CO2 emissions and simply discontinue the engines that don't comply with it, instead of just penalizing a particular fuel type. And for those of you who really care about the CO2 emissions or about going green, there's also an iX1 that should come very soon, an all-electrified variant of the X1 to take on the Volvo XC40 Recharge. And if it has all the attributes of this X1, I think it might just be the bitter electric as well. Now, one of the things that the India spec X1 misses out on is all-wheel drive. You do not get the X-Drive variants just yet. All you get is the S-Drive variants, whether you're choosing petrol or diesel, which means that you get a front-wheel drive configuration. Now, like the 2 Series Grand Coupe, it is a very nicely tuned front-wheel drive configuration. Of course, it doesn't feel as nice to drive as an X3 or an X5, etc. But even for a front-wheel drive, it is quite nicely tuned. There is an assistance feature as well. So especially when you are driving around tight winding roads like these, now I am at moderate speeds, but if you were to go a little faster, start going a little quicker, start going hotter into turns, despite being a front wheel drive, with that assistance feature, it will try and make the turn-ins as tight as it can and get you a good control over the car. Give it a nice tight body control all throughout. That said, in a country like ours, where you can always expect to find some kind of a mid corner bump like we just did, if that happens to be on the inner tire or the inner wheel, sometimes this assistance feature just goes for a toss. It just over assists in a way. It just tries to overcompensate in a way, and the next thing you know, the car just turns in a little too sharply. So that is something that you need to sort of take into account. My solution for this: just switch to sport mode, or rather sport plus mode, where it will completely deactivate the steering assistance that you get. So you are down to your own skills, your own control, and I think in my books that works better. The sport mode will also make the diesel powertrain punchier still, making it feel like a 150 PS car. Another area where the diesel engine again pips the petrol is the 0 to 100 times as well, so that higher power, higher torque actually translates to half a second quicker outright acceleration. That's quite good. Honestly, the numbers aren't very inspiring for the petrol or for the diesel. They're all close to the 10-second mark, so it's not exactly the quickest of cars around. But like I said, with the torque, it does feel punchy in all driving scenarios, which is a very good thing. What you also get with this 7-speed ZF DCT transmission is a boost mode with the paddle shifters. Simply long press on the downshifter paddle and it will engage the boost mode, which lets the powertrain remain in its power band for 10 seconds to help you get that strong serving of power and torque to pull a quick overtake or barrel down a straight road at speed. It works in all modes, but you will really notice the boost when you are in the normal or efficient driving modes. Not so much in the sport mode, because you see things are already sporty there. One more thing that the India spec X1 misses out on is adaptive dampers. So while you have different driving modes, they're primarily affecting the steering feel, whether the assistance for the steering works or not, and of course how the engine and the transmission perform. You can't really make the chassis feel any tighter. You can't really make much change to the way the suspension behaves on different road conditions. What you get is a one size or a one tuning fits all kind of a configuration, and honestly, it's not too bad. We have driven this car on some of the bad patches. We have driven them on winding roads, some fast roads as well, and the X1 seems to do a good job at all of it. So yes, it does feel like a BMW whether you're driving in the city, on the highway, or even around the twisties. The braking manners in these scenarios are excellent too, though the pedal feels a bit over-assisted or bitey in the city environment. That's also because there's an emergency braking assistant that is always working overtime in India, because there is usually a pedestrian jaywalking on the road or someone jumping a traffic light, etc. On that topic, the X1 not only matches but even surpasses some of its competition when it comes to safety tech. Couple this with a healthy list of creature comforts and the X1 finally justifies its asking price, and will also silence those annoying friends who look at such entry-spec luxury cars and say, "Ye to mere Creta mein bhi hai." So like I said, be it ride quality on poor road conditions, be it handling around winding roads, be it sheer engine performance from the diesel, of course, be it sheer cabin size, be it cabin comfort, be it creature comforts, be it features, be it safety features. In all these departments, the X1 actually pips all of its competition. And while doing all of that, it is still priced very competitively against all of them, including the Volvo XC40. So you see, there's no reason why I shouldn't call this the best in class.